Yeah.
We're now
Good afternoon, everyone. Declare the meeting open and welcome all those who are online to the meeting. And welcome to senior staff and fellow councillors. Can I ask everybody to make sure that they have their mobile phones either turned off or on silent, please. Acknowledgement of country will be conducted by Councillor Peter Nelson. Councillor Nelson.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of this land and pay my respects to elders both past, present and emerging. I'd also like to extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders that may be zooming in with us today. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nelson. I'll read the civic prayer. Almighty God, from whom comes every good and perfect gift, we give you thanks for the blessings you bestow upon us in this Shire. Grant to those who hold office in this Shire, in this council, the spirit of justice and truth, of wisdom and charity, that mindful of our responsibility, we may promote the welfare of your people and advance the common good. Amen. So we don't, no apologies. Everybody is present.
Mr. Mayor,
Councillor McLaughlin.
is Councillor Scandred with us?
I
can't see him. I'd
He's
hate
disappeared.
to think he'd miss a council meeting. He's never missed one, apparently.
He's disappeared.
Okay, well, we will assume that Councillor Scandred will be a late arrival if he comes out of the blank screen. So won't take his apology at the moment.
I'm happy to give his apology.
Thank you, Councillor McLaughlin. So at this stage, we will just note that he is absent. Declarations of interest. Adoption of previous minutes of the ordinary meeting on the 12th of August. Somebody like to move that way? Is anybody moving?
Yeah, Councillor Andrews.
Councillor Andrews and Councillor McLaughlin. Any discussion on the correctness of those minutes? No discussion on the correctness. And I put the recommendation. All in favour, please say raise your card.
Yes.
Green is for tick, carried. There is no. Oh, now we'll go declarations of interest.
I'm here, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Scandred. Councillor Turl.
Yeah, 13 legal report 13.1 fees received, and I will stay in the chamber if no questions are asked.
Okay, as noted. Any other declarations of interest? Then we move on to mayoral minute. There is none. We move on to public forum, and there is nil, nor visitor items. So we move on to the business paper on 11.1, page 2, tender for design, development and construction of sale yard upgrades. Do you want
Happy to move number one.
Yep, happy to second number one.
And move Councillor Nelson, secondly Councillor McLaughlin, and we haven't put it yet. I'd just like to make the comment that it has been a delayed tendering process, mainly because of one, the bushfires, but more recently COVID-19. We've got tenderers from coming from interstate to be able to view the sale yards to get a feeling if they wanted to put in a tender. So that is the reason that we are behind schedule for the reconstruction and improvement program out there. So the recommendation, Councillor Turlin.
May I ask the staff, and I know the answer anyway, but I just want to find out, did we give any weight to any local tenderers as it is a local business in COVID-19? It would be great to have support for this money to stay local.
I can answer your question, Councillor Turlin. We have a local preference policy, but in this particular case, there were no local contractors that tendered for the work.
So there's no one in there who is local. Councillor McLaughlin?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I see that we started off with 4 tendering and we got down to 2 because two of them.
Councillor McLaughlin, we can't discuss the tendering.
If we're going to go on a new job, we need to go.
The general range of question the council.
I'm just wondering, are we happy enough that we only had 2 to choose from? That's all.
I'm not going to comment. If councillors want to go into discussion about.
Oh, okay. All right. Didn't think that would be. Okay. Oh, I'll forget.
Halstead?
Yeah, mine should be straightforward and shouldn't get the same answer as the last one, I'd hope. Can the acting general manager just indicate that the tenders comply absolutely with the regulations?
Yeah, that's the way I should have framed it.
Manager?
Well, the tender process was followed in accordance with council's procurement policies and procedures and also the tender regulations. So the process is quick and clean.
The answer was yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Scandrett? Councillor
Mr Mayor, I was just, yep. Yeah, are you there? Can you hear me?
I'm here, but are you seem to be not coming through as audible.
How's that there? Is that better?
That is better.
Yep, thank you. I note in response to Councillor Turlin's question, there was in fact a number of tenders. One was from Forest Lodge and one was from Wagga Wagga. I guess that's as close as you can get. Thank you. Put the motion.
Thank you. So you're moving recommendation number 1, I assume.
No, it was moved by Councillor Nelson.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
I assume you're moving number 1, Councillor Nelson.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
It wasn't on the screen. I just wanted to clarify. All in favour of that, please raise your green card. Carried. We move now on.
Mr. Mayor, I need to read out the resolution.
Oh, yes, now
Councillor.
the General Manager, Acting GM will read out the tender.
So, councillors, the resolution that you've just adopted is as follows. That council accepts the tender from Proway Livestock Equipment Proprietary Limited at a lump sum of $4,251,464.11, inclusive of GFT, to undertake design, development and construction of sale yard upgrades at the Southern Regional Livestock Exchange.
So there should be a small band of people out at the sale yards today giving that a very big clap.
Mr Mayor, don't you think it's
And it's a
important?
Councillor McLaughlin?
No, I think it's important, Mr Mayor, to acknowledge that we are in receipt of a grant from the state government for the community to know about. I mean, this is a great result that we have.
Put the recommendation.
Okay.
Carried. It's a bit.
I thought we'd have an introduction, but never mind. Okay.
Well, councillors can ask for
Well,
it.
Well, we did. We didn't get one.
well, you may as well go into closed.
Yeah, okay.
We can't, if you're going to move a recommendation that is in closed committee in open, it is very hard to have a discussion around it unless you go into closed. Okay, if you wish to bring it up later on, Councillor McLaughlin in closed, then we'll see
No,
what.
good result. It's a good result. Thank you.
Good result. Okay, 11.2, a planning proposal to reclassify lots 11 and 12 and 13 DP at Kalwalla, Sheepwash Road, Green Quarry, page 7. Do you want an
So
introduction?
moved, Mr Mayor.
Introduction.
We'll have an introduction. Let's have an introduction.
We'll have it moved by Councillor Scandrett and seconded by Councillor McLaughlin, and Councillor Turlin's asking for an introduction. Start. Who's going to introduce?
Mr. Mooney, I think, is going to speak to this
Mr.
one.
Mooney?
Thank you, and through you, Mr Mayor. Good afternoon, councillors. The purpose of this report is to seek council approval to proceed with a planning proposal to reclassify the council-owned property known as Kalwalla, Sheepwash Road, Glenquarry, from community land to operational land. The property is zoned E3 Environmental Management and was acquired by council in 2009 in connection with the Robertson Sewerage Scheme. Councillors, a search of the minutes of council in connection with the purchase of the property has failed to find any resolution of council classifying the land as operational, despite the land currently being contained in council's public land register as operational land. To provide consistency with the use of the property in connection with the Robertson Sewerage Scheme, it is now proposed that a planning application be made to reclassify the property from community to operational. As such, it is recommended that council resolve to prepare a planning proposal under section 3.33 of the Environmental Planning and Assessment Act and submit the proposal to the Department of Planning, Industry and Environment for gateway determination.
Any questions to Mr Mooney? Councillor McLaughlin.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just wondering about the length of time this will take and what costs to do this planning proposal.
Mr Mooney.
Through you, Mr Mayor, my understanding through discussions with our planning department is that the planning proposal can take anywhere up to 9 to 12 months to go through the various stages. Obviously, that will involve a community public hearing. In terms of the cost of preparing the planning proposal will be absorbed in terms of it will be prepared by council staff. And any ancillary costs in relation to the planning proposal will be funded through existing budgets.
Yeah, okay, thanks. Shame it wasn't done first up. Thank you.
Any other questions? No other questions, and I put the recommendation as moved by councillor Scandrett and seconded by councillor McLaughlin. Everybody please raise your hand, raise your card. It's a planning matter. So it is carried unanimously. Yes. Okay, thank you. 11.3, page 12.
Yep.
So moved, Mr Mayor.
Proposed land acquisition in Bowral.
To close, please, Mr Mayor.
Move that it go into close for discussion by councillor Scandrett. Any seconder?
Yes.
Councillor Nelson. So we will just put that all in favour. Please raise your hand, raise your cards. All right, carried. Thank you. 11.4, page 13, proposed transfer of Crown Roads, unnamed Crown Lane, Berrima and Fountain Street, Berrima.
Move that way, Mr Mayor.
Move councillor McLaughlin, second councillor Andrews. Any discussion? Then I put it, all in favour, please raise your card. Carried unanimously. We move on to 11.5, investment report. Somebody like to
Couple of questions, Mr Mayor.
Yes, you can have questions.
I'll move it.
Yep. No, councillor Turlin's moving it. You can second. Questions?
I'll second it. Yeah, yes, Mr Mayor, I just wanted to make sure in regard to the Westpac Bank, we're down to it's a A1 plus, we're down to 5.8%. I just make sure that we keep an eye on that as the Westpac will be going to zero because of council's policy. We resolve that way. And I'm not really sure that it may be the most appropriate financial plan that council has, considering its investment policy. I'll just get a comment on that.
I'll ask through the acting general manager, Mr Mooney.
Through you, Mr Mayor. Councillor, I can confirm that despite the previous resolution of council to essentially grandfather any existing investments with Westpac, is that we still comply and will continue to comply with ministerial investment orders and council's adopted investment policy. Notwithstanding that, councillor, the decision by council to essentially remove Westpac from the available financial institutions that it can invest with certainly does put council at risk of not being able to obtain the most competitive market rates moving forward. However, that's a decision for council and one that council officers are adhering to and following direction with.
Happy with that?
Question?
Yes, yes, I am. I've got
Councillor,
a second question.
we'll go Councillor Turl, then if you've got another one, we'll come back to you.
If my memory
Okay,
serves me
thanks.
right, if my memory serves me right, Mr. Mooney, the reason why we went down that path is because of the breaches. I think it was was it 10 million breaches that Westpac had incurred in relation to government law.
Through you, Mr.
Mr. Mooney.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the decision of council to essentially exclude Westpac was at a time where Westpac was obviously under public scrutiny regarding their, for want of a better term, media reports with respect to how they were conducting business.
All right. Councillor McLaughlin.
Oh,
Yeah,
Councillor
I'll go back to Councillor Nelson, then Councillor McLaughlin.
Yeah, look, I just wanted to raise the, on page 22, interest earned versus budget. Not sure if any other councillors were a little confused as I was, but I rang Mr. Mooney up and he put me straight. The interest earned versus budget, the budget forecast is 197,000 and the actual income was 209,000. And it's so close in the first month. That's why the red line is right down the bottom with the green.
Thank you.
So a comment rather than a question.
Thank you, Councillor Nelson. Councillor McLaughlin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mine is just a comment. I think it's good to see that the BDCU have got a substantial amount, nearly to the maximum amount that council are allowed to invest and create jobs in our local area. So I commend staff for getting that to the near maximum. Thank you.
I commend the BDCU for giving the interest rate, Councillor McLaughlin.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, we have the recommendation as moved by Councillor Turler and seconded by Councillor Nelson. All in favour, please raise your cards. Carried. We move on to 12.1, page 24.
Introduction, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, planning proposal to rezone Willow Run 105 to 119 Bong Bong Road, Mittagong. I'll ask Ms. Stannard if she's here. She is, to introduce the item, please.
Thank you, councillors. Through the mayor. This property was first considered by council when we were drafting the 2010 local environmental plan, and at that time council supported consideration of a portion of the site for a potential planning proposal to rezone the land. Within the area that was originally supported, the planning proposal sought to rezone the land to R2 low density residential with a range of minimum lot sizes. The recommendation is that the land be rezoned to R5 large lot residential, minimum lot size of 4,000 square metres.
Okay, so it's 4,000 square metres. Questions? Councillor McLaughlin.
Thank you, Ms. Stannard. Good report. Reading through the report, the protection of the vistas further up, that is something that that you've taken into account and has been assessed as not to be developed. How do we protect that going forward?
Ms. Stannard.
Only a portion of the site that has been identified as suitable for rezoning would form the planning proposal that we would send to the department. So the remainder of the site would be a combination of E3 and RU2 zone land.
So if you go to page 25, it gives you the idea just how far up
Sure.
the path it runs, so to speak.
I
Any other-
was more concerned about how going forward the protection of that other area so it doesn't domino effect up the hill. How do we protect that? Do we need an 88B instrument or what do we need?
No, only the portion of the site that council has agreed to consider would be
Yes.
rezoned. So any further attempt to develop that land would require another planning proposal request to council.
If you read on the recommendation 1, it sort of says it all. Any other questions? Councillor Hopkins, and then Councillor Turl, and then Councillor Whipper.
I don't know mine's a question other than a statement that most of you would agree with me. I think that this is an appropriate zoning, land use being the 4,000 square metres, because looking at Renwick coming out, it sort of grades from the 600 square metre blocks right out to the 4,000. So it's a totally appropriate proposal for zoning, rezoning.
Thank you, Councillor Halstead. I think that's where Ms Stannard takes away a gold nugget in a pocket. Councillor Turland, and then Whipper.
We visited this site in relation to the housing strategy, did we not, just lately?
Yes, we did, councillor.
That's right. And we went through the process. So this particular planning proposal, has this been brought in after we've approved the housing strategy, or this is a new one?
No,
One before or after?
This was before, and it was agreed that we would wait and see the outcome of the local housing strategy before progressing the planning proposal.
And who owns the site?
The site's privately owned.
Yeah.
Both privately owned?
Well, there's only one site
One
that's
site.
being dealt with under this planning proposal.
The name of the owner of the company or whoever?
It's a family company. I
Yes.
think there's about 4 owners on the
Yes.
title.
It's just that we don't want to have any conflicts of interest if we don't know who owns it. And that's what I'm trying to get at here. We need to make sure that councillors and staff are clear of any potential conflict.
Well, I think if you are voting in total ignorance of the owners, Councillor Turland, then you cannot be held responsible for voting on an issue that you have no knowledge of. And
Mr Mayor, we were told on the bus who the owner was.
well, I'm glad you've got a good memory, Councillor Scandra.
Councillor Scandra, it's not that property that you're thinking of on the corner of Mary Street. This is a different property. So the owners
Thank
are Willow Run Developments. That's the name of the property, and that's the name of the owners, Willow Run Developments.
Thank you.
Councillor Whipper.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Just a confirmation from Ms Stannard, if we could. This process will involve more community involvement, will it, Ms Stannard?
Yes, it will. If we get a positive gateway determination, we'll do the referrals and then we'll go on public exhibition and consult through our various e-newsletters and the usual. We'll do neighbour notifications, the standard procedures that we always follow.
Just one last question, if I may.
Hang on, Councillor Whipper, have you finished?
Finished, yeah, thank you.
Councillor
The infrastructure there in relation to the sewer and water, we know that Comungi Chelsea Gardens tied up at the moment because of the so-called sewer and water issues, I understand. Is there going to be issues on this property as well?
The proposal at this stage is to consider rezoning of the land. Subsequent stage for a development assessment would include a draft plan of subdivision and attention to the infrastructure services that would accompany that.
The other comment is that because this is likely to take at least 12 months or whatever, then council will be that much further down the track in commencing work on the Mittagong treatment scheme. But you're right, Councillor Turwood, the Comungi has been held up because of, at this stage, but council is working with the applicant to try and get a compromise there to allow it to commence. Any other questions? Then I'll put the recommendation. Oh, no, we haven't got a mover and seconder yet.
I'm happy to move it, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Andrews and McLaughlin. Is there any, no further questions? It's a planning matter. Please raise your cards. Carried unanimously. Thank you. We move to 12.2, post-exhibition report on planning proposal to permit a dwelling entitlement on lot 2, Park Avenue, Almerton. Do you need an introduction, councillors?
No.
Happy to move it, Mr Mayor, happy to
I'll-
move.
Move councillor Scan, seconded councillor McLaughlin. Is there any discussion? And again, it's another planning proposal. All in favour, please raise your card. Carried unanimously. Thank you. We move to 12.3, Sydney Perry Urban Network.
Introduction, if we can.
Introduction, please.
Okay, through the mayor, the purpose of this report is just to update council on the participation of Wingecarribee Shire Council in the Sydney Perry Urban Network of Councils, which comprises 12 councils on the periphery of the Sydney metropolitan area, including Blue Mountains, Hawkesbury, Penrith, The Hills, Camden, Hornsby, Shellharbour, Wingecarribee, Central Coast, Kiama, Shoalhaven and Wallandilly councils. The group has been meeting since September 2013, and part of this report is for council to endorse the Action Plan 2020, which has been prepared. So there was an earlier plan prepared, I think back in 2015. So the group has updated that particular plan, and it's before council just for endorsement. There's a number of actions as part of the plan that we as a group are advocating on behalf of the councils in the particular area. And it's things such as undertaking research to identify the importance of the peri-urban areas of metropolitan Sydney, not only from an agricultural point of view, but from tourism, for environment, for living, for employment. So, and the actual plan is with council. It starts on page 52. Happy to take any questions.
Any questions, councillors? Councillor Turland. And then
How long have we been involved with this this group?
So, councillor, on page 48, the first meeting was held in September 2013.
Right. Okay.
They had one other questions. Does the group have any comment in relation to the bushfire inquiries we've gone through?
No.
Thank you, councillor McLaughlin.
I'm happy to move, Mr Mayor.
Be moved by councillor Whipper and then seconded by councillor Scandrett, with councillor McLaughlin asking a question and councillor Scandrett.
Oh, look, thanks for this report. I think it's very important. Actually, just my question was with regard to frequency of the meetings. They seem to only happen, once every 3 months or something.
Yeah,
Given what's about to happen with the airport impost in Wallandilly, is there any opportunity to have them a bit more frequently at the moment, just to see how it's going to affect this shire?
Mr. Pepe.
Through, as you can appreciate, councillor, there's 12 councils there that extend from the Central Coast down to Shoalhaven. So, and this is staff that actually participate in these meetings. Now, prior to COVID, they were face-to-face meetings, and we share the hosting of those meetings around. So we've been to the Blue Mountains, to Hawkesbury, Penrith. We've hosted meetings here. We've had ministers for planning participate and other state government agencies.
Good.
The last couple of meetings have been held via Zoom, obviously because of the difficulties with getting around. So, look, we were meeting on a 6-monthly basis at one stage because of the amount of work that all the councils had. And not every council comes to every meeting. It's just availability. And we think quarterly is more than sufficient at this point in time.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, councillor Scandrett.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. On page 57, it details loss of agricultural lands as an issue, as well as conflict. These would be matters you would have probably raised, Mr. Pepping, could you just comment on them, please?
Look, as you can appreciate, the majority of the councils are within the Sydney Basin metropolitan area. So, and statistically, with now the progression of the Western Sydney Airport and the Aerotropolis around Battery Street, Luddenham, there was a significant amount of pre-existing agricultural land in that area that now has been earmarked for future development, airport, etc. So within the metropolitan area itself, a number of these councils have lost a significant amount of agricultural land. Now, through the advocacy of those councils, through the metropolitan planning scheme strategy, they've recognised the importance of holding on to the remaining agricultural lands. From our perspective, we sit just outside of that metropolitan strategy, but nevertheless, we are seeing that as an adjoining council to the metropolitan area, the likelihood is that there will be an increased demand in agricultural land take up for agricultural production, particularly in intensive agriculture, and therefore our policies around the local strategy, our local planning strategy, our rural tourism policy, and some of the work that we're doing around agribusiness and equine industry. It's about utilising what we've got in terms of agricultural land and utilising it to its highest and best use.
And if you notice there, Councillor Scandrett.
Thank you, Mr. Pepping. Obviously, we end up being a bit of a buffer, but the green between comes to mind here, and also the fact that we are the water shire. We are a prime supplier of water to the all those councils. Thank you.
Councillor Turlin.
Has our destination plan taken any information on the documents you've got in front of us at the moment when they formulated the destination draft plan?
Through the chair, look, one of the pillars of the destination plan is around agribusiness and tourism and the opportunities of developing that. Part of the bushfire recovery grant from the state government that we got, $250,000, $100,000 of that has gone towards the employment of an agribusiness equine industry coordinator to help facilitate and have the discussions about growing our agribusiness and developing an equine industry within the Shire. And those sorts of things are reflected to a higher level in these sorts of this action plan. Obviously, it's not specific to Wingecarribee per se. It is probably more Sydney-centric than Wingecarribee because of the issues that arose as part of the Metropolitan Strategy Plan. But nevertheless, it does talk about the importance of preserving those key agricultural areas. Our destination plan is looking at how to utilise the agribusiness sector, both from a production point of view, from a tourism point of view, and from an employment point of view. And it also helps with our character retention as well.
But now what I'm trying to get at is that any investor that wishes to come to the Shire should be looking at that document as part of their strategy, because the information is, as you said, the metropolitan areas are moving closer to us with the airport and such. It just it's more information for them to understand what might be in the future coming forward.
Yep, no, that's a fair point. I mean, there's things in there about identifying options for land valuation that prioritises food production, environmental, visual landscape value. So there's a number of actions and how those actions can be achieved on the 3 pages that make up the 3 value, framework and knowledge. So yes, you're right, Councillor, and both myself, Susan Stannard and Jan Campbell, our Economic Development Coordinator, we share the load of going to these network meetings to discuss those particular issues.
And Councillor Whipper, you would be very pleased, and Councillor McLaughlin, if you go to page 56, and it's the 3rd last dot point, and this might give us a long term a bit of an area to strengthen our belief. They provide peri-urban areas are so valuable because they provide highly valued scenic landscapes and vistas. Now that says something about Leylandii hedges, I would think.
Yeah, I was going to say that.
It's a shame they've only mentioned the Greater Blue Mountains and the Illawarra Escarpment. It would be good if they had to put the Southern Highlands of New South Wales on there as well. But
Get that put in, Mr. Pepping. We'll leave it to you.
Just a point of tension there. We're not the Southern Highlands. That motion's been lost 3 times. We're Wingecarribee.
no, we're in Wingecarribee in the Southern Highlands. That's the way we read it. Okay, so you're right to comment, Councillor Whipper.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Look, I support this wholeheartedly. I think it's critically important to have a plan like this in place. Sometimes it's though that we're fighting back these sorts of things with a stick. I remember the green circles around Sydney disappeared. I remember the scenic hills of Campbelltown, not so scenic anymore. And yeah, they just disappear and they just evaporate. So I'm hoping that there is some honesty in this process. And it is up to our representatives to make sure that the Wingecarribee / Southern Highlands is on the map and that we do protect this area. We know that the benefits of tourism, our ecosystems, our biodiversity, also our fresh air, our beautiful night skies are all things that we can market. We know that. We have to fight, as I said, with a stick sometimes to stop this expansion and this loss of the natural attributes that we value in the Shire. And talking about agricultural land, it is a little bit of a shame, and I'll say it now, that we rushed through in the local strategic planning strategy or local housing strategy, the potential loss of very good agricultural land around Robertson. I mean, we know that we have the potential in this Shire to become a food basket for Sydney and all those other things that we've got to offer. So I'm hoping there is some integrity in this process and that we continue to fight with a bigger stick if we have to ensure that we maintain all those values, those natural and cultural values that we, including the loss of views and vistas through Leylandii, that we all value. So I think it's a great process. I'm hoping to see that it manifests into something worthwhile. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Whipper. All in favour of the recommendation, please raise your card. Carried unanimously, I think. So we now move on to 12.4, and I think I'll ask Ms. Susan Stannard to introduce this. This is the draft control plan signage amendments. So it was taking a fair bit of time to get where it is. So I think it's worth making a comment. Ms. Stannard.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The review of these draft controls originated from a resolution of council when addressing the DA for the signage proposal, which is known as the seesaw signage in Bowral. The principal controls that have been included are at the end of the amended chapter, and they relate to digital signage beyond variable message signage. So up until this point, we've just included variable message signage, which has been largely on roadsides, on trailers. So this provides controls that relate to digital signage on a property that its approved business is for the purpose of advertising. The controls reflect those that were approved in the signage under the development application that was considered, and reflect concerns about protecting the night sky, protecting residential amenity if the signs overlook residential areas, but also adding opportunities in a business zone for a range of signage to participate. I've also reviewed and included the actual heads of criteria for assessment of signage under the State Environmental Planning Policy 64, which doesn't apply to all land in the Shire, but would apply, for example, if we were considering signage in Moss Vale on the main street. But those heads of consideration, I think, are very valid and worth including in our DCP as controls. The rest of it is really just a tidy up to, based on feedback from assessing officers as to what would be helpful to include in that chapter. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Stannard. Questions, councillor Scandra?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On page 74, J subsection 2, illuminated signs, which I think this was all about originally, was illuminated signs, seems to have gone a bit further, shall not display animated, moving or flashing content. What about if the page on the sign changes, Ms. Stannard, from message 1 to message 2? Some of the school signs, for example, go from the name of the school and then they go to event next Thursday, then back to the school. How does that fit in?
Ms. Stannard?
The changing of the signs is permissible, but a sign which has a flashing element to it is not. And this is a State Environmental Planning Policy requirement.
And thank you. And on the same page on B, I just wanted to ask, those roadside signs, where you've got the variable message signs that we put outside the rugby, which are fine, they generate interest in that event. I hope they're approved because they're on council and or RMS lands. I'm happy with the RMS, the rugby signs, just for the record.
Ms. Stannard?
The variable message sign section remains as it was or as it is in the current development control plan.
Thank you. And finally, on the next page, N, page 75, N at the top. This was all about illuminated signage, and we're now making sure that we don't have signs taped or nailed to a tree. Where'd that come from?
All of the controls are there now in the development control plan. There's been some tidy up, as is indicated, but the only new material is in relation to the digital signage other than variable message signs.
Right. Or just that point N just doesn't seem to be related to digital signage at all. I didn't know we had a problem with.
It's not, councillor. It's just to make it a little bit clearer
Right.
for people.
Has there been a problem with these sort of signs?
Well, we have had issues, and as you know, it's been reported where councillors have asked the council rangers take more attention to the putting up of signs on telegraph poles and all sorts of things. So again, it's just emphasising some of those other issues that have arisen aside from the digital signage issue.
Thank you. I'm happy to move this, Mr. Mayor.
And the other thing is, in relation to the signage, if you're going to review a policy, then as Mr. Pepping said, you may as well go through the whole policy and make little changes right throughout the policy that improves it, so it doesn't have to be revisited again for a period of time. And I don't know what the catalyst will be that will have council review its signage policy. But the Seesaw Productions was the catalyst, and I'm not sure what other computer-generated signs will trigger another look at the policy. Councillor McLaughlin and then Councillor Turlin. Councillor McLaughlin.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, yes, look, I read through this and we'll see what comes back. I'm glad Mr. Pepping made those comments. I'm just wondering whether the compliance officers and our rangers will enforce these, or do they wait for some complaints? Because one of the things you've noticed in this Shire, and we're very lucky, that you go to some places and there's just signage everywhere. I'm just hopeful that we put this in our policy, that we do enforce it. Mr. Pepping.
Through the Mayor, look, We do have the staff to do that, and sometimes it's the staff initiate the removal. If it's not by staff, we receive a number of complaints or submissions, and we act on those as soon as practical as well. So it's a combination of both the community reporting illegal or unauthorised signage, as well as staff taking that initiative.
Mr. Pepin, can I just add, maybe in Wedgekarabee today, the community can be made aware of these things so that they look at the signage policy before they stick signs up on power poles and get themselves into trouble.
Yeah, yes, Council, we have done that several times before, and as this goes out on public exhibition for 28 days, we will do an extensive media campaign to alert people to the provisions.
Thank you.
Councillor Ford,
Sorry.
you had your hand up, or?
Yeah, okay. So are we, is it going to move in a seconder? Is it ready to go?
Scandred has moved it.
I'll second it then, if you need a second.
Seconded Councillor Turlin, that it go out on exhibition for 28 days. So thank you very much.
No, I haven't debated it yet. All we've done is just moved and seconded it. All those were questions before, were they not?
I thought everybody had finished. Councillor Turlin.
Well, you didn't have a seconder, so we shouldn't have been debating if we wouldn't have a seconder at that point.
We were asking questions. We weren't debating.
Hence, well, I think some of them have already debated. Okay, look, all I'll say to this is, here we go. We've now corrected something that was actually such a hard and reflective problem that we faced from the previous DCP, which allowed a young fellow to be the catalyst to correct it to where we are. He spent $11,000. And here we are correcting it, of which we just gave him a little bit of grace and educated him to help him through the process. A young kid who went to Chevalier College and was learning, starting a new business. All he needed was a level and simple hand to help him through the process. But what did we do? We hit him with a $6,000 fine the same day he lodged the DA. He couldn't find out how to lodge the DA. Staff couldn't even find, from what I'm told, on his records to the court, even where the signage policy was in a 270-page barrel DCP. The issue is, this is good. We're now to a point that I hope that council staff will reflect on some of the issues that some of the people in this shire on working out how they work the processes, and if we are going to change it to make common sense and a better policy, which is where we are today, that we don't drag somebody through the court system just to prove a point, and then a year later, that's all it is, 1 year, and now we've changed it. And the same DA that was refused 5 days after he lodged it, extraordinary timing, is the same DA that we approved, I think probably less than 6 months ago. And here we are changing the DCP. A little bit of compassion, information would have gone a long way to help this kid without spending 11 grand out of his money and then hitting the bushfires. And over the bushfires, he was the one that was actually putting on the screen all the information from the RSS and the emergency services at no cost, and probably could have been fined at that time because I don't think he had his approval at that point. But anyway, it's good that this policy has finally made common sense, but it took 11 grand from a kid's money to get it to where we are to date.
A little bit of correction. He was asked twice to remove his signage and he refused to do so. He was then issued the fine and he elected to take it to court. Council didn't take him to court. And the magistrate then fined him extra monies for the breach. So there was no need for anybody to pay any money if they had followed the directions of council initially. So I just want that clarified, that it was, and I have sympathy for him as well, but it was brought on by actions that could have been averted. So we have the policy as moved by councillors Scandrett and Turland. I put that. All in favour, please raise your card. All carried. Thank you. So we now move to 12.5, delivery.
Mr. Mayor, Mr. Mayor,
Yes,
Can I-
Councillor Halstead.
yeah, can I just make a comment? And it's not to be in any way taken the wrong way, I hope, but on these signs, quite frank, signs full stop, they're absolutely everywhere. So I don't agree with some of the comments made earlier on about, we're on top of it. I mean, I could hand in a list every week of half a dozen that have suddenly just turned up, I'm sure without approval. So I know Councillor McLaughlin spoke about it. I just reiterate that it's something that needs close attention because it is eroding from our environmental quality. Thanks, Mr. Beck.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to 12.5, delivery program biannual progress report, 1st of January. And
Introduction, Mr. Mayor.
Please, yes, we'll have an introduction. This is from the 1st of January to the 30th of June. Whatever has transpired since in July, August will not be covered. Mr. Lidgard, would you introduce it, please?
Thank you. Through the Chair, councillors, this report presents the 6-month progress report on the delivery program 2007.
Can't hear you.
Sorry.
Can't hear anything.
Here now.
Now I can, couldn't hear before.
So the delivery program includes 100 objectives for the council term, which has now been extended to September 21. And as such, the delivery program has also been extended. The report provides an overview of progress towards achieving the objectives under the themes of leadership, people, places, environment, and economy. At the end of June 2020, 94 objectives were on track, 1 objective was delayed, 5 objectives were on hold. None were classified as needs attention or critical. During this reporting period, the Shire experienced significant impacts such as bushfire and the COVID-19 pandemic. Pages 94 to 97 of the agenda provides an overview of Council's response to the Shire's bushfire recovery efforts and the impact of COVID-19 on its residents. It should also be noted that the COVID-19 impacted on some of Council's normal operations. Restrictions imposed through social distancing requirements and public health orders have resulted in some objectives being delayed or placed on hold. This includes advisory committees, volunteer programs, community events, and in some cases where specialist contractors were required. Councils, I'd also like to provide a further update to DP 54 regarding the Barrow Memorial Hall. Since this update, I would also like to acknowledge that Council has been successful in its grant application under the Building Better Regions Funds Round 4 for the Barrow Memorial Hall redevelopment project, with an grant allocation just over 2.8 million capped grant funding allocated over 2 financial years. Happy to take on any questions.
Questions to Ms. Lidgard, Councillor Turland.
On page, well, I've got here page 76, the expenses and ongoing, continuing ongoing operational employees costs. We started 39 million, we're up to 45 in 2024. And then we've got other items in there.
Councillor Turland, I don't want to interrupt, but what page are you on?
Yeah, I can't find that either.
What's the DP
Starts
number?
at 88.
Yeah, no.
We don't have that with us.
That's
That's the one I've prepared today on, so anyway. Okay.
The DP number, Councillor Turland.
No, just to clarify, we are looking at the biannual progress report from the 1st of January to the 30th of June.
Oh, yeah, I've got the delivery program. Sorry, wrong one. Yeah, you're right. Okay. I got the wrong Jack. Great.
Any other questions? Councillor McLaughlin?
Oh, I'm happy to move it, Mr. Mayor. It's a good report.
I have a
Second
question.
I'll second.
Councillor Andrews, seconded. Questions, Councillor Scandrett?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On page 104,
No, I do have it.
DP 20, Community Engagement Framework effective. There's no mention here of the fact that the Friends of Barrel have been trying to meet with you for best part of 8 months, Mr. Mayor. When will that happen?
There's nothing to do with this report, thank you, councillor Scandon. This is a delivery, this is staff reporting, not me.
I think it's staff reporting on council, Mr. Mayor.
Progress report.
And I think it includes what council does. Anyway,
That's right, council is council. Councillor McLaughlin.
I was just going to speak to the recommendation, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, well, you've moved, has been seconded by councillor Andrews, yes, so you may speak to it.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Look, I thought it was a good report. Just briefly, a lot of the bushfire recovery stuff that's in this is very good. And I think back to the great work that was done by our staff at the time, Mr. Pepping, and our teams of people that in the water and sewerage and all sorts of people, and they were acknowledged, Mr. Mayor, as you know, by the Governor General and his wife when they visited us. And this is a good report. And at the time, what council did, and I've met a few of those people, a lot of them have been very happy and satisfied with the way council reacted and helped out. If I can just quickly go to another item close to my heart a bit more, and it's on page 115, it's DP 50, with regard to, and just read this, that the council staff are working on a heritage education package that aims to provide advice and assistance to owners of heritage items, developers, consultants, and the broader community. I think this is very important, Mr. Mayor, because as you will be aware, we do have, going forward, about 270 heritage items that have been left in abeyance at this moment, but they are now going to be reviewed. So I think people and maybe councillors have got the impression that if you get your house heritage listed, it's absolutely worthless or devalued. And I just think that this is a good initiative by staff, because the review of Schedule 5 of the Wingecarribee Environment Plan will undertake a number of new heritage listings to be incorporated in our LEP. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, councillor McLaughlin. Councillor Scandon.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. Well, I just want to compliment the staff on what is generally a pretty good report. But of course, there's a couple of things in there that I keep on watching. DP04 on page 99, develop and maintain an engaged and safe workforce, something that's very top of mind as we've been through these issues, as Councillor McLaughlin just mentioned. And of course, on page 101, DP10, the council's property activities and so on, with the community's best interests and within legislative requirements. Well, of course, I still maintain a lot of interest in what happens at the RRC. We had the fire issues out there in January. I hope all issues at the RRC are now put to bed. Mr. Paul will probably correct me if there's anything outstanding there. But I think communication. I'm sorry, Mr. Paul?
I'm not sure what issues you're referring to, councillor.
Any issues, Mr. Paul? I'm just saying, is it all settled down out there? How's the report going on the fires?
Where that was unsettled.
Thank you. And the last thing I was going to say, Mr. Mayor, is enhanced councillor interaction with customer interaction with council. Well, that ties in with our customer satisfaction survey, which we haven't seen this year due to the departure of the general manager, who was being part of her process.
Yeah, councillor
Page
Scandon.
102, I'm in debate, Mr. Mayor.
I know, councillor Scandon, you're in debate, but you must be correct in what you'll say or ask it with a question. Mr. Paul will correct your last statement. Mr. Paul.
Well, councillor Scandon is referring to the customer service survey. That was presented to council.
Satisfaction, is it, we do it every 2 years?
Yes, and it's due again.
2021.
2021. So it was presented, so it's due again in 2021, councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Paul. Yes, enhancing customer interaction with council. Well, of course, I again mentioned the Friends of Barrel's consistent request to meet with you, Mr. Mayor, over the Station Street project, and they date back to nearly 9 months now. But otherwise, a great report. We're watching those things. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor Scandrett, and we will agree to disagree. So I see no point in meeting and creating a debate when I am on a totally different page to a protest group. Councillor Whipper.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, again, a good report. It gives us an opportunity as well, councillors, just to reflect on the past 6 months and the amount of work that has been done. We often, in our haste and emotion, we often forget to recognise the efforts of staff and the incredible amount of work that they do. I think Councillor McLaughlin referred to the bushfire recovery process. I know firsthand that that's working really well on the ground, and people are really appreciative of the efforts that are being put in place to assist those people that are suffering from the results of the bushfires, including mental health, social supports, and just that general support around all the issues of advocacy as well that go along with that. I'm pleased to see the environment report as usual. A lot of things that we're doing, and we're moving towards that commitment to climate change as well. I'm looking forward to the next report, and hopefully by that stage we'll have our community group in place, and we'll be taking some advice from people in the community that have some expertise around climate change, and introducing that into the Chamber of Council as well. But all in all, a good report, and I thank staff for the efforts that that they've contributed on behalf of the community over the last 6 months. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor Whipper. Councillor Nelson.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Yes, it's good to see the report, and it's heartening to see the number of green dots there that indicate that they're on track, and having regard to the black summer that we've just had. One of the things I was interested in was the list of money that's been spent, the 1,225,000, and that possibly we'd get an update of where we're at with those monies spent. So I'd just see that if that could come to us somewhere down the track, that'd be great. Thank you.
Okay. Yes, any other speakers? Yeah, I take that point, councillor Nelson. The vast majority of the tree cutting has been done, and tree removal. And there's just one little thing that council has done. It's nothing huge, but what it did do, and if you go to page 96, and you see where council staff took the initiative of having excess wood that was removed and off the roadside, whatever, it was taken down to the park at Balmoral, opposite the adjacent to the hall, and out of that 80 tonnes of firewood was split and then delivered free of charge to the residents of Balmoral. Now that's the little things that can make a community appreciative and make sure that they're being acknowledged. They're not just left out there. But there's been comments made by Councillor McLaughlin and well, everybody from Councillor Whipper and Councillor Nelson. What I believe council has achieved in the last 6 months to the end of June, realising what we have gone through as a council, and we, you know, you're going to just reiterate the fires and the flood and the COVID-19, to have the amount of work done on track, on time, on budget, I think is should be commended to staff. And we still have another 6 months to go before the end of this year, but I say well done to the staff. Good report, Ms. Lidgard. And as such, I endorse the recommendation as moved by councillors McLaughlin and secondly councillor Whipper.
Quick right of reply, Mr Mayor.
Right of reply.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, I think we all appreciate some of the things our good staff have done. One I might mention here too, about two local wildlife carers organisations that had money distributed after the bushfire. So generally, I think we tried to look generally where we could assist. So yeah, I'm happy to move the motion.
Thank you, councillor McLaughlin, and we'll see how the trees that we planted down at Balmoral grow as a symbol of a new beginning down there. So I put that. All in favour, please raise your hand card. Carried unanimously. Thank you. We may move to page 134, 12.6, optional LEP clause, natural disaster recovery.
So moved, Mr Mayor.
Move councillor Scandrett, second councillor Turley.
Oh, no, councillor Whipper can. I just got a question if I can.
Okay, move second councillor Whipper, councillor Turley.
In this LEP change, I'm just getting it now. What statements from the Royal Commission does this have any effect in the LEP changes, natural disasters? Because the natural disaster in the LEP, the Royal Commission was natural disasters. That's a federal natural disaster, Royal Commission. This is a New South Wales change to the LEP. Did the LEP change have any input from the Royal Commission natural disaster?
Through you, Mr Peppings.
Thank you. Through the chair. Look, I guess we haven't. The New South Wales inquiry report was published yesterday, and there's 76. My understanding is 76 recommendations in that. That's quite a very thick document. We haven't seen anything from the Royal Commission yet. Now, this was initiated by the Department of Planning, and since the bushfires, myself representing Wingecarribee Council and all the other planning heads of the different councils that were affected by the bushfires, we were meeting on a monthly basis to talk about some of the impediments in the planning legislation for people to rebuild. The purpose of this particular clause that will be inserted into Council's LEP via a state environmental planning policy is to overcome the situations where if someone might have had a house built 50 years ago and they built it on I'm just using an example of Hilltop, they might have built it on 600 square metres. Our LEP now says that a house in Hilltop must not have a lot less than 1,000 square metres. Now, if someone's house burnt down in those situations, it would inhibit them from rebuilding. So this clause allows that person to rebuild on their 600 square metre lot, but they will have to rebuild to the building standards for a bushfire prone location. So this is just to overcome some of those anomalies that may exist within the planning system.
Yeah, I get that. But second question, if I may, before we move forward.
Yes.
So in our submissions to the Royal Commission of New South Wales disaster, which is more like the New South Wales bushfire inquiry, and in relating to this LEP change, did we make any submissions in our late submission to the New South Wales bushfire inquiry in relation to this LEP?
No, because we weren't aware that the department were embarking on this particular thing. We only got notification of this optional clause. It was only probably 4 weeks ago.
You know, what I'm trying to say is that you guys were meeting with different other departments and councils, so you would have brought up the issues about changing items in the LEP to project what might be the issues coming forward in a bushfire-prone zone.
Yes, we have had discussions about that, and there's obviously discussions about unlawful houses. that have been built over in areas in the backwoods of different council areas and how you deal with those. And there was a lot of discussion around that. This is a bit of a housekeeping situation. The initial initiatives that the department were looking at were to do with bushfire situations. This is now looking at more widespread natural disasters. So situations where you've got flood, storm, whatever. So
Earthquake.
yes, it was discussed, but it was an initiative by the Department of Planning that went this little bit further to bring this clause about.
So is this too early, not knowing only yesterday that the inquiry from the New South Wales bushfire inquiry has been tabled? Is this LEP too early to be implementing it? Are they too far apart? Should they be joined first before two separate documents become law?
Through the chair, no, look, I don't believe so, Councillor. Like I said, this is about addressing natural disasters that happen, and not long after the bushfires, we had a storm event in February. We've had a series of storms, so it would leave people hanging if we waited any longer on this. So I think our preference is that we get included in the state environmental planning policy so that this provision gets put into our planning instrument as soon as possible.
Yep, good.
Thank you, Councillor Scan, then Councillor Halsall.
Yeah, just in the questions, Mr. Mayor, you refer to the 76 recommendations from the New South Wales inquiry, Mr. Pepping. When do you expect to report to council on those?
Mr. Pepping?
Look, sorry, I haven't. The acting general manager and the executive, we haven't discussed it. As we said, it only came out yesterday. It's about, by the look of that, 500 pages or more.
Yes, it's quite big.
So I think it will take us a little.
436 pages.
Yeah.
Look, councillors, the report, or the report from the inquiry is publicly available. You can download it at your leisure. I've done that. I've read the executive summary. I've been through the 76 recommendations. Have I read all 436 pages? No, I haven't. I need time to digest that and understand what it's recommending at a very high level. And I guess the first glance I've had at it, a lot of the recommendations relate to more operational issues and other agencies and communication and how things are managed with the community. On first reading, there's not a lot there that directly relates to local government as such. There are things there that have some impact, but my reading of it is that there's not a lot there that directly relates to local government. But that's only a first reading of it.
Okay, I think it's too preliminary to make any comment in relation to that.
I wasn't asking for that, Mr. Mayor. I was just asking as to when it might likely come to council, just with a report, and I'll look forward to advice on that. Thank you.
Well, I think it'll be a little while. Councillor Halstead.
Are we in debate yet, Mr. Mayor, or not?
Well, we're still asking questions in relation to it, but if you want to get into the debate, then I welcome you to it.
Yeah, well, I'm not going to be very long, and I don't think this warrants a huge amount of debate. It's common sense. Clearly, the proposal by the department is welcome, should be welcomed by everybody, but the emphasis clearly on lawfully erected, lawfully created. And this is a real issue right across the state, right across the country, obviously, but in this case, we're talking about New South Wales. People will have been given approval many years ago, and I can recall some, as I mentioned earlier today to some of you, that, out at Colavale and Hilltop many years ago, the council of the day was confronted with dwellings, if you like, or dwellings inverted commas, in terms of them being demolished or burnt or whatever else. And was a hell of a problem when you had to look at what was maybe a structure, if you like, because that's what some of them were, built in the 20s, 30s, 40s, etc. And the council had to deal with that. So this is a very good clause, and quite frank, am I surprised it's come from where it did? To some extent. I think it was certainly their role to do this, and they've thought very quickly, I think, for obvious reasons. But it's something that's really welcomed, and the emphasis is very much on replacing something that was lawfully approved before, and it's got nothing whatsoever to do with standards, building standards, BCA stuff, which comes at a later date. So this is totally supportable, and we should carry this unanimously.
Thank you, Councillor Halstead. I hear a bit of planning coming out there. We're in debate. Councillor Halstead is debating the issue. So if anybody has comment to make, Councillor Turley.
Yeah, I'm looking at the operational plan in our finance report. Reading on the bushfire recovery, it's quite clear that there was 123 properties through the Shire where Laing O'Rourke has cleaned, and another 13 to be cleaned in mid-July. So we've got 136 properties that have been cleaned up through the Shire. Some of those probably, I would assume, would have all been legally built, but maybe some of them weren't legally built and still cleaned up by the government. The other issue is quite clear that out of the bushfires, there's only been 13 development applications since the fires, and that's up to the 30th of June. And that's basically 11 buildings. So that's 4 dwellings and 7 outbuildings. So we haven't been inundated with a huge cost of DAs that was a concern back in the 28th and 29th of January this year. A very small amount of properties have already come in through the process. This is a good change to the LEP, but I still think there probably will be another change once the 490-page document of the bushfire inquiry, New South Wales bushfire inquiry documents have been read through. So just, as I said, preempting that there might have to be other changes depending on what's in that 500-page report. It would be a shame to do this again in another 6 months. I'm just wondering, that's what I'm trying to say. I don't know if it's too early. You've told me it's not, but I just believe it probably will be, because other changes will be made mandatory through the LEP from the New South Wales government final recommendations.
Yeah, I think you're right, Councillor Turley. I think we're a bit, to try and get a report before council is just too premature. Councillor Scandrick.
I'm just going to sum up, Mr. Mayor.
Oh, hang on.
You've moved it, so you can.
Hang on.
I think Councillor McLaughlin's first.
All right, Councillor McLaughlin. Anybody else want to speak after Councillor McLaughlin?
I haven't got much to say, Mr. Mayor, just to say that Councillor Halstead has probably covered it really. This is a positive step for our community going forward, and why wouldn't we put our hand up to assist our community under a natural disaster, whether it be floods, fires, what have you. I think it's great. I think it's well deserved. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Scandrick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, the reason I've moved this is it gives clarity and confidence to our community in the face of future and past, I guess, natural events, natural disasters. I think anything that improves that so that people can get answers promptly is good. I look forward to the Acting General Manager bringing a report in when he can on the New South Wales inquiry. Thank you.
Thank you. All in favour of the recommendation, please raise your card. Carried unanimously. We now move over to 13.1, legal report. Do you want any introduction or questions, councillors?
And going to close.
Well, I can talk about the fees and that.
Is somebody prepared to move it?
Yep, happy to move.
Nelson, secondly, Councillor Andrews. Councillor Andrews. Any questions? If not, I'll put it. Councillor Turley.
No, put it.
I'll put it. All in favour, please raise your card. Carried unanimously. We move over to 16.1, minutes of the Finance Committee meeting held on the 19th of August, page 143. So
I've got a question if I can.
Yes, well, I'll get a mover and seconder first, and then we'll ask a question.
Happy to move it.
Councillor McLaughlin, seconded Councillor Nelson. Question,
And I-
Councillor Turwin.
I have an amendment which I'll read out in a minute, but basically I've got questions in relation to the finance meeting. And what I'm trying to determine is the difference on Station Street. So in the major projects greater than 5 million, the amount spent to date is 2,311,700, 2,311,700. But you go to the report and it's 2,334,945. There's a difference between those two figures in this report.
Okay, you want clarification on that?
Yes, please.
Well, let's take it on notice, Mr Mayor.
Have to take it on notice.
Okay.
Oh,
It's gonna,
I have a question too.
can I ask another question before we move forward?
Councillor Turwin.
We know from before that an increase to any works is under the public works guidelines of 17%. When will this project have that 17% increase to it?
What project?
Station Street?
Station Street.
Councillor Turlon, I'm not sure what you're referring to. Public Works guidelines, what are you referring to? I'm sorry.
I remember a comment that you made after a seminar that you went through, that we increase any public works or major projects by 17% on a yearly basis.
I don't believe it made any statement. I think what you're referring to is I went to an IPWA conference in 2018, and there was a session there where there was a conversation about in escalating of costs, particularly for road construction works. And there were varying views about what that percentage was, but it was much, much higher than CPI. I don't believe we've ever quoted 17%.
I just remember 17%. Well, that could be reflected in past documents from what the project was valued at, and then we increased it through, and probably we could do that, and I could find that out myself through my own research, but I'll let you take that on notice and come back and tell me what the rate increase was, where we are today of $18 odd million.
I'm not sure what the question is.
I'd like you to tell me what the research that you've just said the increase was back when we did increase it from 16 million to now $18 million. It was
a question. I went to an IPWA conference in 2018.
Yeah.
One of the sessions that was presented there by learned engineers was a conversation about road construction costs. And I guess about the challenges of forecasting increases in road construction costs.
Yes.
And that conversation was very much around the fact that road construction costs increase much greater than rate pegging and much greater than CPI. And there were a number of, if you like, positions put about what those sort of percentages were. And I think I made a general comment about that session. That's all I've done.
No, but we actually have increased Station Street in line with what?
Yes, by approximately 8% per annum is the figure, I believe.
So we have 8%, not 17. It's 8%. Okay, well, I'm just being corrected. That's fine.
Well,
You've now told me what the increase is.
From, but anyway,
Sorry?
I'm not sure where the 17% came from.
Just pretty clear in my mind that that's what you said that back then, but that's 2 years ago, so I understand the difference between our ideas and what was said 2 years ago. That's fine. Okay. Now I have an amendment. If I can put it up, please. I'll read it out.
I have a question first.
Okay, we'll go for a question first. Councillor Scandrett.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Well, actually, following a bit on from Councillor Turlin, I mean, the project Station Street was 9.5 million in September 2017, is now double that, and the contribution from the community has gone from 2 million to over 10 million. But my question is, in the finance meeting, Mr Paul, you stated that the 2.31 million was all about planning. Is that, I've got that right?
That's not the case. What I said was that a significant part of the initiation of the project is to develop the detailed plans for the project. Didn't say that was the total cost of that planning process.
Okay, so the balance of that is actually the commencement of the project such as buying trees and warehousing.
We acquired a piece of land, which I think was around about $700,000. I don't have all the figures in front of me.
No, that's fine, Mr. Paul. I was just clarifying that the project actually is past the planning stage. It's actually started, if you take my point.
No, councillor, I don't agree with that statement. It started in the sense that the detailed planning is being undertaken, of course.
Well, I think buying trees and warehousing them and so on.
We had that conversation 12 or 18 months ago, councillor, about those trees and that tender process.
Yes, Mr. Paul, the project has started is my point. Thank you.
That's an opinion.
Well, that's their opinions. You know, making statements when it's an opinion is a bit misleading to the general public.
I would have thought buying trees is a fact.
Councillor.
You could use them anywhere.
Councillor Turlin.
You built a car park right behind me here.
Councillor Scandrick, thank you. We'll put up the amendment.
Okay, that in the major projects general funds revote, that items listed below, that a report spreadsheet be produced to councillors, and that the report will show budget against costs, variations, and further forecasts. 1, Station Street upgrade. 2, Berrima Road deviation project. 3, Kirkham Road South. 4, Kirkham Road North.
It's finished.
One that's very important, one that's very important that I think we need as councillors to have our handle on it is the Civic Centre upgrade. Number 5, Civic Centre upgrade. I'll need a seconder on that, please. Somebody? Not.
There is no project.
Just before that goes up, Mr. Paul would like to make a comment.
Well, just to clarify, councillor, Kirkham Road North was finished in the previous financial year. Actually, I think it was finished in 2018-19, actually.
Yes, I understand that.
It's not a current project, it's done.
Okay, if you don't want to word it as current project, what I'm trying to do is get a hold on what we've actually spent on that projects and what was the budget on variations, if any, on that project. I know we got a government grant and it's a very good job, there's no doubt there. But the Kirkham Road South, we now find that we've actually had some increases that we weren't aware of. And even to the point of not in the budget was the increase of about 240 odd thousand on water main, and then 1.6 million.
No, again, councillor, that's not correct. That's not correct, councillor.
Well, they're not in the budget.
Councillor, that's not correct. Water mains and sewer mains are not part of the general fund budget. It's against the Local Government Act to fund water and sewer infrastructure from general fund rates. Water and sewer mains are always funded from the relevant fund. They have to be legally. They're always recorded in the budget.
That's not what I'm saying. It's trying to get an overall hold on the total cost of whatever work has to. Where the money comes from, it's irrelevant to me. It's understanding a project cost.
Then there is a recommendation that you have moved an amendment. You're removing Kirkham Road South, or you're still wanting to leave that in?
North.
No, I want them both there so we can have a clear understanding of what the total cost is for the whole Kirkham Road.
Well, that will come back to council when the project's finished in relation to the south end.
I know, but only last week, actually, in the documents we got in front of us in an email less than a week ago, we now have an increase of $200 and odd thousand. I've got it here somewhere. The water main's 241 and the extra work was 260. That's now work undertaken because of the curb and gutter to be replaced and some
Well, no, that's
other
not correct.
unforeseen.
The domain was always part of the project.
Well, that's fine.
It's not
Just
a
put it
variation.
in put it in. Well, I'm not saying that was a variation. I'm just trying to get a hold on the total project. The way
Okay,
you do it, you have a
before we
spreadsheet.
go any further, this is going to take time, and I don't know what it'll achieve. Do you have a seconder?
Yes,
Seconded councillor Scandron.
and we should be reporting normally on these matters anyway, Mr Mayor. The information is.
You've seconded,
Councillors get a report quarterly.
then you get a quarterly report. I mean, it is part of the reporting system, and I can't say any more than that. There is an amendment has been moved. So, councillor Turland, you have the right to speak to your amendment.
As I said, we're looking at the finance report that we did on the 19th of August. And clearly here, yes, we do get a report. But what we don't get is a complete spreadsheet as normal projects would do. And you would have, I would assume, in our project management scene, a simple push the button, print a report on budget against actual cost, against variation and forecast cost. That is what your project management system will do. We know that because, as you know, I've been in the industry for many years. All I'm asking for is a complete breakup, and I am concerned that I am concerned about Station Street, but also the Civic Centre, is that we don't have another debacle like we had in the Berrimah Overpass. And the only way for us to be comfortable is to be provided the information that staff have, which is a push-the-button spreadsheet showing budget against actual, money spent, variations. It's a simple push-the-run and forecast costs. It is. If you aren't doing that now, we are not doing our business as expending public money without total control. Now, I can see councillors seem to be a bit frustrated with what I'm trying to ask for, but you've got to understand this is public money. And we've had one hell of a disaster in Berrimah Road on just one or two issues, but the major one was the electrical supply, starting from, I think, 96, then went to 160, and then went to $1.44 million. And I still today do not know what that cost is, because we've finally only just got the work approved to do the work from Endeavour Energy. Now, all I'm saying is the information is already in your computers. We have funded a project management system, and I think we should be, as councillors, not just getting a one statement page in our reports, a complete breakup of where we are, and not an email 1 week before the finance committee saying, oh, by the way, we're up for another $260,000 for extra work that we've already undertaken, but we're now telling you we've spent the money. We have to be responsible. It's public money. And the information is there for council very quickly to be able to provide to us.
Thank you, councillor Turland. Now, you've made a couple of statements there that council staff would like to make comment on. That is the amount of monies that need dissecting. Mr. Mooney would like to make a comment in relation to that.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Mayor. Councillors, just a very quick point of clarification. Approximately 9 to 12 months ago, as part of the quarterly operational plan report, which is submitted to the Finance Committee, we amended that report so that it included a status report, a push-the-button report, as you can call it, which provides councillors on a quarterly basis with an up-to-date position regarding budget and actual spend, with comments provided by senior staff. For the majority of those projects, that's the Group Manager of Capital Projects. It provides councillors with updates in terms of key milestones. And obviously, councillors, if there were significant variations where it was timely to report those to council as part of that quarterly report, then we would do so. So with respect to the report that's been requested, that report has been part of that quarterly operational plan, at least for the past 3 reporting periods. With respect to the comment regarding the variation to Kirkham Road, again, councillors, we felt it was necessary and timely to provide you with an up-to-date position with respect to that project, as senior staff knew about the variations. That was the reason why the email was sent prior to the Finance Committee, to ensure that there could be no accusation that staff withheld that information once it became available to ourselves. We provide that report, councillor, and I'm happy to have a discussion as to how that can be improved moving forward. That's a conversation that I would welcome from any councillor, and would be open to any conversation with the councillor regarding that.
Just one other clarification, if I may, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Turlin said that the council weren't aware of what the cost of the electrical works are for Berrimah Road. That particular project, or that part of the project, went to open tender and was reported to council, and council actually determined the tender.
What part are you talking about? The roadworks, or are you talking about
high voltage electrical relocation work? It's been reported to council.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying that's not the case, but when you
I just say you weren't made aware of what the cost was.
No, that wasn't what I was saying. Is getting in a spreadsheet. For instance, I have the document that you're talking about. Everybody has this document. It does not give us a spreadsheet of dollars against budget. What we have is a budget, total expenditure, but where's the other costs in there? Where's the variations?
We are now asking questions and we are in debate. My comment is, Councillor Turlin, that you come in and you sit down with Mr. Mooney and you get it explained.
I don't have to have it explained. I used to do it for a living.
Okay, you did it for a living, then you will understand when you come in and sit down with Mr. Mooney. I mean, council staff are not hiding stuff. I mean, there's this inference that there is
I am not inferencing. I'm just getting what I believe is a fair document for everybody to understand of how we're spending dollars for the community.
Right, we are in debate. Councillor Halstead, and then
look, I'm not interested in going into fine details, but what I am interested in is one's good governance, and everybody else should be, and that includes the staff, a democratic right to have this information made available. Now, it should not be a problem, to be quite frank, to be able to produce this information. I'd suggest you the statement made by Mr. Mooney in the last 5 minutes or so attest to that. So, to me, it's pretty straightforward. It would seem to me that there's someone worried about producing what is a pretty straightforward spreadsheet. And I cannot understand why anyone, particularly Mr. Mooney and Mr. Paul, would object in any way, shape or form to the question that's being put by Councillor Turlin. I mean, quite frank, I'm accountable to the public, and to be right on the money, so are the staff. But this is a simple request about a spreadsheet with facts. And I can suggest to you that if you go back 20 years, 30 years ago, this sort of thing was quite common to be put before an elected council, was details about the job estimate, the job cost, the variation, where it was financed from. I'm not the slightest bit interested in debating whether something's in the water account or the water rate or the water fund or the general fund. That's not the issue. The issue is the total job costs and whether it's within budget, not within budget. If it's not, then, how's that solved? I'm not into trying to lift rocks and find problems, Mr. Mayor, which seems to be an innuendo or insinuation there. It's about good governance. I'm not going to say any more.
Thank you. Well, my understanding is from Mr. Mooney is that is supplied in the quarterly report. Councillor Scandron.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, Councillor Turlin referenced the increase in costs, I don't say blowout, in relation to Kirkham Road South, the footpath and curb, the damage in that area. Well, that course, that will come to the next finance meeting. It was emailed to us prior to the last one. And that is a substantial blowout. It's over $250,000. When you look at Station Street, which Councillor Turland has put into the motion, it's gone up 100% in 3 years, from 9.5 million to 18.26. So yes, I welcome some detail in that space. Kirkham Road, I have a diary note that said 93,000 was going to be the amount for the electricity infrastructure, which is now at 1.8 million all up, including potential land and so on. So these are questions that, as Councillor Housestead says, we are the voice that talks to the community, and the community are asking these things. I keep on saying the Friends of Barrel, for example, Mr. Mayor, want to come and see you. Have been for 9 months. Please don't talk over me. I'm just speaking. And
No.
I know, I think that they're...
Excuse me, Councillor Scandred. If I speak, you stop. Right?
There's a delay when you speak, Mr. Mayor.
You make comments, off-the-cuff comments, that are totally inappropriate in the line of the debate. So I will ask you to keep your debating skills to the point we are debating.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, but I am copied in on, I have received copies of correspondence requesting repeatedly meetings with you from the Friends of Barrel. So I don't know whether you won't...
Councillor Scandred, I will put you in the waiting room if you pursue with this line of comment. It is got nothing to do with what the debate is about.
I think it's got everything to do with the question of the amendment, Mr. Mayor. Anyway, my point in supporting this is, yes, we need to be accountable to the community. They're asking questions about these projects, and certainly we're being looked at. Performance improvement order has been flagged, and I think us showing proper communication with the community is essential. I don't think this is onerous. Push a button, pump out a report. Thank you.
Thank you, and as I say, it's all available. Any other speakers? Then I will put...
Yes, I'll speak, Mr. Mayor. No, Mr. Mayor, I'm happy to speak against.
Yes, Councillor Nelson.
The amendment. Look, that's how council does business, is with its quarterly reports. This is not how we do business. We don't get these cost runs on every project that we do. Look, the politics of it is that the three councillors that just spoke are dead set against Station Street, and they're bringing on whatever they can, talking about public money. It's a gotcha amendment is what this is, and I'll be voting against it.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Andrews. Councillor Andrews, you've muted yourself. Can you unmute yourself, Councillor Andrews?
Yep, there you go.
Away you go.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, I oppose the amendment. And if we really needed to know a reason why, listening to Councillor Andrew in his last part of his debate, there's reason enough there for not supporting the amendment. But protocol suggests or demands that these reports come quarterly and they're accurate and they're transparent. I believe that the 4 points underneath Station Street as a subterfuge or a diversion. Station Street's the real point here. You know, we say the public need to know these figures. Well, fine, they get them 4 times a year. That's got to be adequate. So I won't be supporting the amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Andrews. And I do make the point, if you vote for the amendment, you're not supporting the Finance Committee minutes that were debated. Okay, so we have an amendment. All those in favour of the amendment?
No. You know I have a right of reply to the debate.
Not to the amendment, you do not have a right of reply.
I think I have a right of reply, Mr. Mayor. I moved it.
There was no motion, so it's actually the motion. There is
But were the minutes moved?
no.
I thought I moved it.
No, they were moved.
I did move it.
Okay,
Yeah,
my
they moved
apologies.
by councillor McLaughlin, second by councillor Nelson. So there is no right of reply to an amendment. Councillor McLaughlin.
Look, all we are doing here, councillors, is looking to note the recommendations. This is what we discussed in our finance committee. So I don't see, if councillors want to bring forward some other motions at another time, that's fine. But I think we just have to note this report. That's a recommendation. So I'm happy to note it, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. So we put the amendment as moved by councillor Turland. All in favour, please raise your hand. Councillors Turland, Whipper, Scandrett and Halstead. Those against? Councillors, oh, that's me, wrong card, first time tonight. Councillor Andrews, Nelson, McLaughlin and Gare, and I'll use my casting vote to defeat the amendment. The motion, the amendment is now defeated. I put the motion. All in favour, please raise your card. Councillors Andrews, Nelson, Whipper, Scandrett, no, not Scandrett, McLaughlin and Gare. Those against? Councillors, Councillor Halstead, you're voting for, against the motion, so you've got to pull up your red one. Councillor Turland, Councillor Scandrett and Councillor Halstead. Thank you. We now move on to 16.2, minutes of the Windsor Carriby Community Safety Committee. I'll move that from the chair. Is there any, do I have a seconder? Councillor Whipper.
Second.
Thank you. So, question, Councillor Turland.
Yeah, on page 156 of the motion of the the report, it says that it's an update on the bushfire recovery. And what I read here is that item 1 was a report on the bushfire recovery was noted. That's fine. Number 2 was that the note that it be noted that the submission presented to the Royal Commission to National Disasters Arrangement was circulated to all committee members of that meeting, at that meeting. But what is missing is the New South Wales bushfire inquiry. It's not noted in this at all. All it is it says update on bushfire recovery, but you've only nominated and noted one of them, which is the Royal Commission, not the New South Wales bushfire inquiry.
Well, the same one was, it's the same submission was submitted to both. So in theory, it should read that the bushfire...
New South Wales bushfire inquiry.
And the New South Wales the New South Wales fire...
Bushfire inquiry.
So that can be included. It was just a given, but that can be put in place. Any other questions that I put it? All in favour and those against? Carried. We move over to minutes of the Community Development Advisory Committee.
I'll move that way, Mr. Mayor.
Whipper, seconded.
Yeah, happy to second.
Cruz. Is there any discussion?
Yeah, I'd just like,
Sorry.
I'll let Councillor Whipper go first.
Thank you, Councillor Nelson. Mr. Mayor, I just wanted to raise a point here. This meeting was conducted via, I think it was TeamViewer. I tried to log in unsuccessfully. I sat in the waiting room for quite a while. The organisers of the meeting knew that I was there, but I couldn't get any access to the meeting as all. And if you look at page 172, the minutes, it actually says there quite clearly that I was chair in part. Well, I wasn't chair at all because I couldn't get into the meeting. I found it very frustrating. I think Councillor Andrews was an apology that evening as well, and that was noted. But as a result of that, there was no councillor representation of that meeting, not because I didn't want to be part of that meeting, Mr. Mayor. So I really don't know what it was. I tried to ring through. I was cut off. So I'd just like to raise that point because I think it's important that there is councillor representation at these committee meetings. And I'd be asking through you, Mr. Mayor, that our IT department look at the reasons behind that. I know that with Zoom, I'm not having any problems, but TeamViewer, for some reason, seems to be there seems to be an impediment there. So I just make that point. And if IT could look at that, I would appreciate it, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, I take your point, Councillor Whipper, that sometimes it can be frustrating. We had a meeting with the Southwest Health today with other councils, and they could see us, but they couldn't hear us. So I understand the frustration, but I'll pass it over to Mr. Crawford for his.
Thank you.
Councillor Whipper, in relation to this matter, IT wasn't actually aware of the meeting being run, so support couldn't be offered.
Okay.
One thing I would say though is that we have successfully run 2,943 meetings over the last 3 months internally. So I do apologise for the issue, but if you do have that issue again, feel free to contact me directly and I'll happily talk you through anything that's happening.
All right. Well, as I said, Mr. Crawford, Zoom doesn't seem to be a problem. But I did have a previous meeting on TeamViewer with another Department of Council that was successful, but this one quite clearly wasn't successful. So I've just flagged that and thank you for that response.
Councillor Whipper, the other commitment I will give you that for all meetings, committee meetings, etc., coordinated by council staff, I'm going to require them to make IT aware that those meetings are happening, at what time those meetings are happening, so that if there are any issues, IT can be there to support those issues.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Paul. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So we
Thanks.
put the recommendation as moved by Councillor. Who seconded? Councillor Andrews. All in favour? Carried. So we move now to notices of motion. Planning proposal to rezone public reserve Cherry Tree Close, Moss Vale. Councillor Nelson.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Look, this one's been close to my heart for a number of years.
Before you
Happy to second, Mr. Mayor.
By Councillor McLaughlin. Councillor Nelson.
Yeah. Look, about 13 years ago, former councillor David Stranger and myself viewed Cherry Tree Close Reserve as a possible sale site, and it's currently in the same condition as it was then, virgin land. I contacted the staff to find out what the issue was up there. Apparently, there's no immediate plans by staff to develop this reserve. Apparently, there's $3,000 to $4,000 in costs to maintain that area. And one of the reasons I'm bringing it to council's attention is I resided in the street there, and every time I drove past the reserve, I didn't ever see anybody in the park. And look, if just down the road, next to the KU Children's Centre, there's Bruley Park, and I asked the staff what's actually there, and the response came back: many trees, playground. There's actually a good playground, picnic table, and pathways. And they also said that Strode Park is nearby. What this resolution is calling for is for a report to come back to council, and at that time the local community will be given an opportunity to have a say on the proposal. The problem was that when council resolved to consider selling off blocks of land at various parks across the Shire to fund the proposed indoor leisure centre at Erridge Park, there was approximately 50 people opposed each and every proposal. And this occurred because the land proposals were incorporated into the LEP review, as opposed to advice that I actually gave to Nick Campbell-Jones, with the property officer at that time. So I sort of know the history of how parks and selling them and reserves went. Apparently, this land could possibly get council about $300,000 to $400,000 into the kitty, and I asked the question, well, what could that be spent on? And in the past, we were putting those monies towards the loan refund of the indoor leisure centre. But in the past, we've also contributed or talked about contributing monies from the sale of any reserves to nearby park. So Brewerley Park could possibly get $100,000 of that money to improve the park facilities there, in particular playground, the playground facilities.
Thank you, Councillor Nelson. Councillor McLaughlin and Councillor.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Look, I did take some time this week to go and have a look at this this area. We're only asking for a report to be brought back, and my assumption is that when this subdivision went through, I guess the landholder was told to contribute some land for a park, and it's just sat there. So, given that our playground strategy is out on exhibition at the moment, and we are looking at concentrating better facilities and reducing some of our areas that are of little value, should I say. They might be the value to in another way, but as a park, they don't seem to. So we're looking at destination parks that, and I've been to a couple of those recently with pump parks with my grandkids, and these are heavily used. But just to have a bit of land, like I've seen there sitting there, really, I don't think contributes much to the amenity of the area. But Councillor Nelson is correct. If some money could be directed to the bigger park and established park further down, just down the hill, was just to walk around the corner, I think that would be a better result, and council could, improve, as I say, improve that area and some other areas. So we're just asking for a report on this. I think it has merit, so I'll be supporting it, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor McLaughlin. Councillor Turlin, then Councillors Halstead and then Scanlon.
May I just ask a question to the staff, if I may? And that, has this piece of land come up in our proposals from past sales?
Yes.
Before?
Yes.
I thought it had. No problem. I just wanted to make sure that we had looked at this bit of land. I thought we had before. Councillor Nelson, great idea. I think a report would be good, and I don't know why, if we've looked at it before, why we haven't approved it before. But anyway, it'll come back in a report, and that's good stuff. Well done.
Councillor Halstead.
Yeah, look, essentially I oppose this sort of viewpoint. It sort of makes me think that Councillor Nelson's showing his pro-development side here. But on the other hand, it depends upon what happened at the time it was deliberated upon. And there's little doubt in my mind that it would have been a proposed and required dedication as a result of, the needs of obviously the residential development around it. So fundamentally, I oppose it. But if it goes forward, obviously we'll find out what the residents think. But I'm not altogether on side with these fire sales to just dispose of land that's in the name of the community.
Thank you, councillor Halstead. Councillor Scandrett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, I'm going to propose an amendment, and that is that we also look at getting rid of Maynard Park in Bowral on the same basis. I'm sure that we'll have seconders from the people who want to sell off public parks, like Councillor Nelson here. I mean, it's extraordinary. This is a reliving of what happened in 2008 to 2012. You're spot on, Councillor Turland, because that's what we're talking about. What's next? It will be going through and saying, what can we sell off and so on. There's somebody who's asked to buy this, as I recall, was muted in the discussion on this last year. It was Councillor Halstead when we examined a number of these pocket parks. This one was found to be significant in terms of the eyes of the local people who regarded it as part of their local environment. Now, I take the point that we could look at these things, but here we are again, spot rezoning on the run, gardens and parks at risk. We've seen this, we saw the community rise. I won't be supporting this.
Thank you. Any other councillors? Councillor Whipper.
Likewise, Mr. Mayor, I'd just like to echo my concerns in relation to the sale of any of our parks. We stood very firm on our dig in relation to the proposed sale of parks and public spaces way back. I don't see the need to do this. I think community land is something that is very valuable to the community. The whole process of changing from community to operational, as we know, only takes one objection from the community for it to be then considered by the minister themselves. I don't think we should put the community through that angst again. Our parks, I believe, and our open spaces are sacred, and I don't think that this is the time to be doing it. So with respect, I understand that there may be some positive motives that have been mooted by Councillor Nelson, but in good conscience, I just can't support this.
Thank you. I was one of the councils who wanted a full review of all operational and non-operational land. And we, at the beginning of this council, we went through and we ended up selling a piece of land that was controversial to some councillors, and that was Franklin Street. I am totally opposed to selling off land and putting it towards non-capital or capital works or improvement. Asset for asset. So if the land were to be sold, then I agree with Councillor Nelson that the initial thrust of all of this way back when was to fund a capital asset, which was the Moss Vale War Memorial Aquatic Centre. But to put it towards just improvements, I don't support. The other thing is we've done our budget for this year. I'm going to be not supporting. I have thought about it long and hard because there hasn't been a need or requirement. We determined Franklin Street could be used for major capital works. There's not enough money in this to do a major capital purchase to keep the asset in council's hands. So, and there's no community push for it. I understand where Councillor Nelson's coming from, and probably at the beginning of the term, I would have very seriously considered it. But I don't believe by doing this at this stage in the current climate that the community is in, is to sell off a piece of community land, I think will create angst. Our budget's been set. It will only keep going up in value at another time. But I do agree with Councillor Nelson's comment that we will have to review community land at some stage, because Councillor McLaughlin made the point. We have a playground strategy out on exhibition. Let's wait until that comes back, because there's going to be a bit of controversy out of that too, I think. And that may give some reflection to the community that may think, oh, well, council is going to sell off playgrounds. Well, I do not want to give that perception in any way, shape or form. So I agree with your thrust, Councillor Nelson, but at this time, I just can't support it, and I felt I had to justify the reasons. Councillor Andrews?
Any trouble with this?
You're right. We can hear you.
Am I okay?
Yes.
I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor. Look, yeah, I support Councillor Nelson here. All he's asking for is a report back from staff. That's all he's asking. And ultimately, if it goes out on exhibition, the community will tell us. And we will take notice, and I would take notice in particular to a playground as such, even though it appears to be not used at the moment. I believe this is harmless, and there's no problem, in my opinion, to bring that back from staff. Thank you.
Thank you. So we have a recommendation as moved by Councillor Nelson and seconded by Councillor McLaughlin. All in favour of the recommendation, please raise your hand. Councillors McLaughlin, Nelson, Turland and Andrews. Those against? Councillor Gare, Councillor Scandrett, Councillor Halstead, Councillor Whipper, and that's it. So that's a very interesting position to be in.
Let's get a report.
I said I would not support it at this stage, so I'll be using my casting vote to defeat it. The notice of motion is defeated.
I'd just say, Mr. Mayor.
Sorry?
I'd just say, look, I missed the information session that was held about the sale of land, and that's the reason why I brought this one up. So I ran out of time, unfortunately, to explain that.
Yes, I take your point.
Bad luck.
Before we go into closed committee, you have been on about this for a long time, and my feeling is that it's just not the right time at this stage.
We're land banking, Mr. Mayor.
Nothing wrong with land banking sometimes. A lot of people do. Okay, I will now ask for
It's a long drive to council, I know that.
Okay, I'm asking for a recommendation that we go into close.
Move that way, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor McLaughlin and Councillor Scandrett, put it all in favour.
Aye.
All right.
Carried. Thank you for those who are watching the live streaming. We are now ending live streaming and going in.